distance I get from this movie, the more I appreciate it. I saw it yesterday afternoon at a press screening. And, I don't like this kind of movie, as many of you know. I'm not into really graphic horror. But we have some interesting things to discuss. And if you're a Halloween fan, I just want to set your mind at ease. This is a positive review. So, there's a cruelty to the Halloween films that has in the past really bothered me. But I'm starting to see a purpose to it with this film. So, David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, again, a cruelty to how people are killed in their Halloween movies. As Scream so famously and hilariously pointed out, and correctly pointed out, usually in slasher films, there are rules. You got to do something bad to get on the kill list. And I think it gives the audience a feeling of that they could escape, because if they just don't do those things, they would make it through the night. But in these Halloween movies, good people die. And very much they portray Michael Myers as a force of evil, as a force of nature, non-discriminatory, just oversweeping anything in its path for the most part. And in some scenes, interestingly, this movie highlights the bravery of first responders, as they have no choice but to pursue Michael Myers. I thought that was really interesting to see it from that perspective. Or in the case of firefighters, to put out a burning building with no idea of what lays in wait for them inside. So that was particularly interesting, unique, and quite cruel, that those first responders that were then killed so horribly. They and many other good people are murdered throughout this film, grotesquely. These are not fast deaths. They are torturous, and I felt absolutely horrible for every victim. In a way, though, the more I think about it, I'm like, is this a better choice for slasher films to elicit sympathy from the audience and the hope that we could somehow reach through the fourth wall and save these people? Is that better than presenting kills as entertainment with laughs and thrills? Maybe. And I think that's really interesting. I also have to say that anger and feeling of helplessness does factor into the story here, into how the folks of Haddonfield react and act during this film. This is the non-spoiler review, but that's important. I don't think that the sympathy element is well done enough for me to feel that it's entirely intentional on the part of the filmmakers. And if it is, again, they kind of missed the mark a little bit, even though I give them major points for even starting down that path. But one thing that they do very clearly and strongly is they have another social commentary angle here, which I'm curious to see how people react to. I don't know if the core fan base is going to like it or not, but I liked it. I also thought that was very interesting, especially thanks to Anthony Michael Hall doing a good job anchoring that storyline. And when you take the sympathy aspect in, it becomes even stronger. But social commentary and intellectualism aside, for just a moment, we're going to get back to it in a second. But I know that some of you are like, yeah, bottom line, there are some things that I just need this Halloween movie to do no matter what. And those are, is Halloween Kills scary? Yes, it's very scary. I had to look away numerous times. I was terrified. Is it atmospheric? Oh, it's atmospheric, all right. And does it feel like a Halloween franchise film specifically? Heck yeah, it does. You really do feel like you're watching not only a Michael Myers story, but one that is adding depth to the legend from the previous films. So I think it checks all those boxes, and I think I wonder if the more intellectualism stuff that's being layered on here will just be something that can expand the audience, or if it'll hinder people enjoying the things that the movie does also deliver. Now, on that note, I would not call Halloween Kills a fun movie. Not just because, again, I don't like that kind of gore, but I don't think it even wants to be a fun movie. I would say it's, as I said, an intellectual slasher, a poor man's Silence of the Lambs or Psycho. And I say a poor man's because it's just, let's be honest, it's not going to ever get to the heights of those movies, particularly because it retains a campiness to make it feel very much like the original film. Right? Which is very respected in and of itself. But that has a stiltedness, a campiness, It feels in some ways stuck in time, which even though this new storyline is in a modern current setting, it has a lot of those qualities. Haddonfield feels very much like a town that has one foot in the past, not just because of Michael Myers. Although maybe Michael Myers is holding the town back psychologically. That's also very interesting. But it's just, to be able to be a Halloween movie for the franchise, it can't be at the level of Silence of the Lambs and Psycho. But I think that it's trying to have one foot in that area, and I think that impressively, it at least to some degree is successful in that regard. Now, when it comes to Psycho, that, of course, is the very first slasher movie starring Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. And amusingly, Curtis paid respects to her mother's legacy in costume for the film's premiere. Interestingly, Jamie Lee Curtis takes a back seat here to a surprisingly large cast. And I'm sure that's partially because the producers would like a franchise that's viable someday without Curtis, that you could make a Halloween movie without Laurie. And I think this movie proves that you actually can, quite frankly. But the last film, of course, multiplied one of the most famous final girls in cinematic history by giving her a daughter and a granddaughter. But instead of once again focusing on those two like the first film did, all three of them, all three are kind of sidelined until the third reel, which is interesting because we switch over. Who do we switch over to? Mainly to the boys, which is refreshing for a slasher film to have so many male characters focused on. There's Hall's character, as well as other Michael Myers survivors like Midnight Mass's Robert Longstreet, who's very good at getting choked up. He's great here too. And also, speaking of survivors, none other than Real Housewives of Beverly Hills' Kyle Richards, who starred as a child actor in the first 1978 movie. Now, Kyle Richards, I'm afraid, is no great actress. She's not even a moderately good actress. But you know what? She managed to blend in with the rest of the cast, and she does a nice job with her one major scene. I thought she did a good job. She blended. Good for her. And it's fun to have Richards, not just because she's a reality star on a show that I happen to watch, so I really got the reference. But it's just nice to have her and other actors from the franchise show up here again because it makes it feel more authentic, more special, more, the history of the franchise is more palpable. I think it's great. Other cast standouts are Thomas Mann as young Officer Hawkins. I would have loved to actually have seen a lot more of that. And Dylan, I would love to, focus more on, Malignant had a police officer, but usually police officers aren't main characters. The psychological impact of being the one who has to go into the house after the crazed mythological slasher is really interesting. And I would love to do, I guess that's, speaking of Silence of the Lambs, there's Clarice to a degree, but in a slasher movie, I guess there's Dewey in Scream, but like a serious police officer who's like, yeah, I guess we're going in there. That's great. Dylan Arnold as Allison's on-again, off-again boyfriend made more of an impression on me here than he did in the last movie. I can't believe he keeps the pencil skirt on throughout the whole film. You can't run in a pencil skirt. But on that note, he's in the opening, and he plays just such a kind person throughout the movie, but I want to point out that David Gordon Green has a long history in his films of strong LGBT representation. And to see a young man in drag being so heroic towards a police officer in the opening of the film is so incredibly important in a way that cannot be undersold. I thought that was just fantastic. It was so great to see it. And on that note, in addition to the strong social commentary, Halloween Kills is surprisingly and refreshingly progressive in expanding its cast. I know some of you don't like to hear about this stuff, but everybody likes to see themselves on screen. And I think it's important, we're seeing it in some genres, but to see it spread to the slasher genre is really exciting and a really huge deal, and was going to broaden the audience for these movies. I don't know why they don't play it up more in the ad campaign. But anyway, the black couple from the first movie have legit roles here, played once again and very well by Carmela McNeil and Michael Smallwood. They were great. While Scott MacArthur and Michael McDonald play a gay couple who have the misfortune of thinking it would be cool to live in the childhood home of Michael Myers. They were phenomenal, fantastic. To have these types of characters with significant extended roles, where they are the main focus of their scenes instead of best friends or comedic relief, and again, a Hollywood slasher film, this is huge. It's just such a huge step forward. It's like you are watching movie history be made here. The cinematography has that awesome 70s grain, and they play up the Halloween night angle just enough to get you in the holiday mood. I mean, I think it's a smart play to have this both in theaters and on streaming, because Halloween weekend, I think a lot of people are going to turn on Halloween. I mean, at first I was like, I don't know, it's really disturbing. I don't know if you're going to want to watch it. But again, I said, it stuck with me. So maybe I would recommend that you do it. Maybe not Halloween, I don't know, maybe to kick off the weekend, because this is awfully disturbing. But I mean, even though it plays up the Halloween angle, it does it just enough. So it does, because if you went too far, it would become cheesy, and I think it would undercut the franchise's pseudo highbrow integrity, which it retains. Good for it. Good for Halloween. So no, I didn't enjoy watching Halloween Kills. I was very disturbed, but I respected its craftsmanship while I watched it. I felt it was a good Halloween movie, both in terms of the franchise and the holiday. And I have to say, a little over 24 hours after I watched it, it's really stuck with me, more than I would have anticipated. And at this point, I got to see how it ends. I got to see what David Gordon Green and Danny McBride do to wrap this trilogy up next Halloween with Halloween Ends, although we all know it's not going to really end. But we'll talk about it in the spoiler review. But, you know, the movie's a little silly and frustrating in places, but then you can't have a slasher movie if everyone's competent. But we'll talk about that again in the spoiler review. That's my non-spoiler review. Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.